Today, we have a very special guest, and he comes from Peru. Our resource speaker is Dr. Michael White. He was born and raised on the west coast of the United States, and now he is living in Peru. He earned his Bachelor of Arts in Business and Theology from Walla Walla University in Washington, USA, and his Master's in Divinity from Andrews University in Michigan, USA. He has earned varied work experiences at the Universidad Peruana Union, including being a student missionary, English teacher, general studies religion teacher, translator, and most recently, he is the head of scientific publications and translations. He is a learner by nature, optimizer by design, and teacher by passion. He is an experienced trainer, teacher, and leader with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. He is also skilled in research, training, higher education research, and public speaking. His research interests include methodology and translation, adaptation, and validation of quantitative instruments. So as you can see, our speaker is both in the quantitative and qualitative traditions. He is a trainer for Web-QDA. By the way, Web-QDA is an AQRA partner, has been our AQRA partner for several years now. And for those of you who were in our 2019 annual conference, Antonio Costa, who is one of the key leaders of Web-QDA, was there. He joined us, and he even gave a plenary presentation. So Dr. White is a trainer for Web-QDA and thesis advisor for qualitative studies in education. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our speaker today, Dr. Michael White. His presentation is titled Qualitative Studies While Working from Home with Web-QDA. Dr. White, we now give you the time.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Araceli, and thank you to IAS for the invitation, and thank you to AQRA for allowing me to join you here. Um, it's a privilege for me to be able to join you from the other side of the world here in Lima, Peru. I see there are many from the Philippines, but of course from many other countries as well here represented. And thank you all for giving me this opportunity to come and share a little bit about what opportunities we've been seeing here during this pandemic. I'm going to go ahead share the screen here. There we go. So here I realize that the exact circumstances are a little bit different in each country, but the current COVID-19 pandemic is affecting all of us in one way or another. So our big question here is, can we still do research while our offices are closed? Especially here on the qualitative side, most of our interactions were, of course, in person. We need people in our classrooms, in our offices, so that we can talk with them. And yes, of course, we can try with all of the security measures with masks and gloves, but in many countries, including here in Peru where I am, education during the last year or so now is completely online. And even on the business side, many business offices are still closed and everything is all being done online. So I know several students And even some colleagues have simply put their research projects on hold. They're waiting for an eventual time when we'll be able to continue doing our studies in person. But I want to let you know that there are opportunities to continue studying even while we're here working from home. And the current pandemic actually gives us a wide range of qualitative research opportunities because we're in the exploratory stage of many of the consequences of this pandemic. So, here to give some ideas, what exactly would that look like if we transition our qualitative studies from in person to online? Well, I've seen now more focus group studies using platforms like the one we're on right now, Zoom, or some of the other options like Google Meet. We still have the opportunity to get a group of people together. And as an added bonus, if we use a platform, a virtual platform, then we can also record the sessions relatively easily. So that way we can review it later. Or for interviews, one interesting option now is the increased use of social media messaging apps. Here in Peru, WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger are the two big ones, but there are many new alternatives also coming in that allow you to record and send short video or audio messages. And this provides an easy way for our participants to join in the study when they have time. They don't need to sit down, connect, join in on a whole conversation. They can simply send us a short answer. We can write them a simple question and they can record a video or audio message and send it to us. If we're looking for a more broad polling strategy, Google Forms has actually been one of the great options we've found here because it's often included in the Google suite of products that we're already using. But there are, of course, other options like SurveyMonkey and others. Now, it's true, many of these are more geared towards quantitative studies, but most also allow open ended questions where you can reply using text. And there are even some more advanced options, like selecting parts of a picture, for example, that can be very useful in qualitative studies. Another interesting group of studies that I've been seeing now is in reviewing information that's already available on social networks. For example, Twitter is a great opportunity to gauge public opinion. Now, this can be used more on the business side to see people who are using a hashtag or who are tweeting about your company and your handle. That can be a great way to perhaps gauge interest in the launch of a new product, but also on the education side, seeing more studies about the ways people are responding online to perhaps a big event. And if you have a social media account, you can use that to ask your contacts, your friends, family members, colleagues, for their feedback. Uh, in my case, I found the best use with that through Facebook. And I've even seen what earlier we might have called perhaps a structured literature review, but using YouTube videos. For example, let's find all the videos about a certain topic, like a certain disease, and treatment options. And this is the information that if someone has been diagnosed with this disease, YouTube is in many countries, the second highest, most searched website. When someone has a question, the main place they go is to Google, but the second place is often YouTube, where they'll ask a question like, how can I treat this disease? And then you can look through those videos and evaluate how good or perhaps how bad is the information available. These sorts of studies, all of these, can be done right from our homes or wherever it is that we're working, even in the middle of this pandemic. And this is just a small sampling of the available options. I hope this gives you some idea about what options are available, and I hope that maybe one of these has sort of given you a little spark, a little idea that, well, yeah, I could do something like that. Now, here is where Web-QDA comes in. You see, without any specific software, there are, of course, ways to do these sorts of qualitative studies. You can go very old school and use a corkboard, little pieces of paper all organized there, or perhaps using something like Excel, trying to organize little blocks of text into columns. It is possible, but it's a lot more time consuming. And a major disadvantage, now that we're all working from home, is that it's a lot harder to share our findings and our progress with others, with co-researchers on the project, or perhaps with an administrator who would like to see our advances. It's very difficult to share that when we use software that's not really specifically made for this purpose of qualitative analysis. So that's where WebQDA come in. WebQDA has actually been around for over 10 years now. It's a project that started in Portugal, actually, at the Universidade de Aveiro. And as was mentioned, Dr. Costa has joined in on some of the uh, previous meetings here in AQRA. And this core team has continued working with WebQDA, partnering with some other institutions and businesses until now they have this software that is all online. It's not something that you install on your computer, it's a website that you log into. So you can use any computer or device with internet access. And here it's specifically geared to handle non-numerical, unstructured data for qualitative analysis. And this lets us include things like documents, we can create our categories, our codes, we can filter, and then the biggest thing then is to query and question the data. That's at the end so we can start seeing some results. So what exactly can WebQDA do? Well, we can work with text, with audio, with images, and with videos. That gives us a pretty broad range of qualitative sources that we can analyze as part of our project. And we're free to mix any and all of these in a single project. You can upload your own files, or you can also link to external files. Uh, Dropbox is a good option if we have a really big file that we can't upload, but we can also use YouTube, especially useful, like I mentioned, if we're doing a more sort of literature analysis using YouTube videos. You can add in your own socio-demographic information. This can be done manually, or if we already have it in a spreadsheet format, like an Excel worksheet, we can simply import it, and then all of the socio-demographic information is tagged or encoded into the responses. Then we can encode or tag the relevant sections of our source material, and if it's in a non-text format, like audio, image, or video, we can type in a short description or perhaps a short quote from that source, and then use that for our analysis. Then what sorts of options do we have to visualize those results? Well, we can generate word clouds, most frequently used word lists, but to me, perhaps the most relevant and the most useful of the outputs that we can get from WebQDA are the tables or grids of the different codes or categories that we assign to our data, organized or grouped by sociodemographic information. For example, we can see how many men versus how many women responded in a certain way, or perhaps if there is a difference based on the country of origin of our participants, or based on their age ranges. Any sociodemographic information that we can think of to include, we can use to filter and organize our results. And right now, perhaps the biggest feature is that since WebQDA is, as its name suggests, web-based, it is all through an online platform, it is geared towards collaboration. It's actually available, the whole interface is available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and any team member with a subscription in any part of the world can be invited to collaborate in our project. So this is great for working with our colleagues that are perhaps are within the same city and we're all working from home, but it's also great if we're on the other side of the world and we can continue to work together on the same research project. Now, it is true that for this level of collaboration, each member needs a subscription to this program. But they've also realized that many times there are certain stakeholders that also need to be able to see our progress in real time. Maybe those are our administrators, our deans, or presidents. Maybe in an academic setting, it's our thesis advisor or dissertation advisor. Or maybe we just want to share our progress with some colleagues. We can invite anyone without a subscription to come and see all of our progress in real time in a read-only mode. So of course they won't be able to edit anything, but they'll be able to see everything that we have. So in an academic context, Web-QDA is very useful for students, researchers at all levels, from undergraduate through doctoral students, and of course, professors as well, to have synchronous or asynchronous analysis of qualitative data. This collaborative aspect is key. And in a more business setting, it's very useful for what here in this group you are perhaps more familiar with than most in qualitative data analysis, like customer opinions about a product or a particular advertisement. But there's something important that we need to acknowledge here. We can say that Web-QDA is to qualitative research and SPSS to quantitative research as the word processor, Microsoft Word, is for writing. Perhaps if you're not following the analogy, what I mean is that no matter what software we use, the human factor is always critical. To put it perhaps more directly, my text editor doesn't write alone. Microsoft Word isn't going to write my paper for me, and of course Web-QDA isn't going to do all of my analysis for me either. It's not like an automated machine learning model. That's not what we're looking at here. The human element is key. When we're talking about a qualitative study, we need to do our own analysis. Web-QDA is there to help us to organize our results, to share those with others, and to more easily analyze those results. Here are three of several examples of real journal articles. These are all in well-indexed journals within Scopus, Web of Science, and other similar databases that used Web-QDA just to give a sampling of what sorts of studies you can do and publish using this software. For example, we had a focus group with an open item questionnaire in an academic setting. That one was published a couple of years ago. And just this last year, we've had two vastly different studies, one in a nursing setting with pre-test and post-test interviews. So the focus is on health literacy. We, the researchers here, developed a whole program to help inform, to help educate people about health literacy. And they used an interview at the beginning and an interview at the end of this program to help measure its impact. How well did this program help the participants learn or improve their health literacy? And in a completely different vein, we actually had an ecological knowledge study. And here they use semi-structured interviews to gauge the local ecological knowledge of a community and the impact that had on the fishing industry for a particular type of fish. These are just some of the types of studies we can do. And here in this group, I don't think I need to convince you that qualitative studies provide a wide range of opportunities, and Web-QDA is there to help us organize this process. Now, that some people unfortunately end up a little disappointed with WebQDA, and so I just want to acknowledge a few things from the beginning. The process of importing or introducing and then coding or tagging the data, it is time consuming. There's no way around that. But it is much slower if we try to do it without software, just on pieces of paper, or if we try to use software that's not specialized, like Microsoft Excel, for example. So yes, the coding is going to take some time, but since it's in a collaborative environment, we can work together with a whole team to import and encode or tag this data. And there is going to be a high dependence on the researchers. Yes, it's collaborative. Yes, we can get other researchers to help us, but there are some things that can't easily be delegated. It involves a fair amount of work on our part. And as a qualitative study, as most of you well know, we're not going to present some sort of innovative solution like a formula the way we might in a quantitative study. But if we can take those limitations, we might say, for what they are, we can see how WebQDA can really help us with this sort of qualitative analysis. This is sort of the structure of how WebQDA is laid out. We have the source system where we import and encode or tag our sources that directly ties into the coding system, and then we can sort of validate the different codes that we have. And finally, that wraps up here with the, I might say, the questioning system where we can start getting some results. Now, in the time that we have, I'd actually like to share a little bit of what WebQDA actually looks like. Now, in other contexts, I've worked on a whole webinar that's a little more hands-on on how exactly we do this. But for now, with the time that we have, what I'd like to do is just switch over to a different screen here and see what exactly that looks like with a project that's already imported, it's already set up, just to give us a little bit of an idea. So here, the guiding research question for this sample project is, what has been the hardest part of this COVID-19 pandemic for you? So note how this is at an exploratory stage. Of course, there are many valuable quantitative studies that we can do about this pandemic, but it has impacted our lives in perhaps unexpected ways and in ways that go a lot deeper than just concerns about our health. So this qualitative study is an example that came to mind, but I tried to find a way to apply it with real data. So here's an example of what sorts of sources we can import here. We have both internal and external. For internal, one of the fastest ways to import all of our data is with an Excel file or a spreadsheet of some kind. In this case, what I did was created a mock-up. It's not real, but I made a Google form, open-ended questionnaire, and then had different people fill it out. And as part of that questionnaire, I asked them a few socio-demographic questions, like their gender, their age range, and the country that they're from. Since I imported that as an Excel file, all of that information is included as a descriptor. So for each one, if I put my cursor over it, it tells me, okay, this paragraph here is from a lady from the United States who's between 51 and 55 years old. Or this paragraph here is from a young man from 18 to 25 years of old from Australia. Or this one from here is from a lady between 31 and 35 years of age from South Africa. And here on the right, we can see it a little more summarized, which age ranges we have, how many people in each age range, or which countries we have and how many people from each country. Those are the descriptors, what we call the socio-demographic information. When we switch that over to the codes, these are the categories that we assign to different parts of the text. And these we can create as we go, as we find more information from our participants, or we can start with a group of codes or categories in mind. Here, when we mouse over them, we can see where some parts are tagged. And I have a group of sample codes here with the guiding question of what has been the hardest part of the pandemic. For some, perhaps it's their family interaction. They're unable to visit their elderly family members, unable to meet for their regular family gatherings, or perhaps more in social gatherings. They can't meet for regular meetings, or they can't meet for religious meetings. These are just some ideas to get us going here. The other types of sources, this is where I want to focus, we can copy and paste in text from websites. Like here, we have examples from Twitter, and these are real examples from real people on Twitter. I just tried to search for hardest part of the pandemic. And of course, some of them are sort of joking or not really taking it seriously, but I selected some people who responded in a serious way to this question. So these are people that I don't know, but they've published, they've tweeted on Twitter, and here I did what I could to try to find some of their socio-demographic information based on the profile, based on what I can see. Say, okay, well, apparently this person is 31 to 35 years of age, for example. And all we need to do to tag a new section is just highlight the text that we want to add with a certain tag and just select which one it is, like this is a female here. So just click that and encode. Now it's all set. Other types of sources that we can include. Here is a Facebook example. On my own personal Facebook, I posted this question asking people to tell me, okay, what have been the 3 hardest things about this social isolation, or what some people call the quarantine measures during the COVID-19 pandemic. And here you can see that I've added in codes and descriptors. So since these are my friends and contacts on Facebook, I know some information about them. Like this first person, Grace Colton, she is a lady from the United States. She's 51 to 55 years of age. And this is the sort of information that I added as far as socio-demographic details. And as far as codes, okay, we have 3 answers from each person. So need to take each one separately. Like here, she said, not being able to spend time with my elderly mother. Okay, so let's make that one whole category, unable to visit elderly family. Second one, not going to church in person. Okay, unable to meet for religious services could be the category there. Or not having social gatherings with friends and family. Okay, unable to meet for regular social gatherings. Okay, and in this way, going through and trying to tag this data. So you can see it's still a work in progress. I haven't finished this whole thing, but there's one thing that I wanted to point out here. Some of my contacts on Facebook speak Spanish because, well, I'm here in Peru. And that isn't a problem because the one who needs to encode or tag this information is us, the researchers, right? So it doesn't matter what language we're working in. We can set our codes in whatever language we would like, and then we can select and highlight and tag or encode. Like here, it says, like this first one, this is Damaris Quinteros, who works here in the university here in Peru. It says, no poder visitar a mi padre y hermanos en Navidad o vacaciones, which is something like, I can't visit my father or my brothers for Christmas or on vacation. Okay, so I take that one as unable to meet for family gatherings. So you can see it, we can include a wide range of input, which is especially useful for many of you who are in countries where several languages are spoken. That part isn't a problem. The interface, these buttons, the menu labels here in Web-QDA are available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But the information, the sources that we include can be in whatever language that we, as the researchers, can understand. That part's not a problem. Other sorts of inputs, sources that we can use, mentioned having people send us a short video. So in this example, I sent myself a video, sort of giving a little idea of what that would be like. We can use that, we can encode part of it. So here it is, a little video clip. And I just selected little pieces. Like, okay, so this little piece from 4 seconds to 11 seconds, right there, we're talking about unable to visit elderly family, for example. And so we can tag that. The point is, we don't need necessarily to transcribe the whole video file or the whole audio file. We can, of course, that's definitely an option, and that's what I have included as another sample source. Let's imagine that we have here a transcript of a whole conversation. Of course, we can input that too. That's not a problem. But we don't have to necessarily transcribe the whole thing. We can import a video and just write out a few specific sections that are most relevant for our study. Now, as we mentioned, we can also use external sources. Like here, as an example, I'm using a YouTube link from, in this case, I'm just using a video from my conference as an example. But we could use YouTube videos as an external source, and there are other options there too. Once we import everything, we're into the coding section. We can use free codes, which each code is not related to any others. They're just separate categories that we can use. But for me, one of the most useful is tree codes. We can sort of group these into categories and say, like we were saying as an example, right? Unable to visit elderly family members and unable to have regular family gatherings all go within the family interaction category, let's say. Now, once we've started working on our coding, when we go into this coding view, we can see at a glance which of our sources already are using that code, and we can see exactly what was said. Like here from my Facebook example, not being able to spend time with my elderly mother was tagged here. And we can also check out our descriptors or our socio-demographic information. And if we click on female, okay, these are all of the ladies who have responded through Twitter, through Facebook, through a Google form. They're all grouped here. All the different sources that we have included can all be grouped together. Going through this process of coding is a bit time consuming. They are working here in Web-QDA. They're in a beta stage of an automatic coding where we can start manually selecting and tagging or encoding our data for a little while to give the platform a little bit of an idea what we mean, and then we can try automatic encoding to try to finish it. It's still in an early stages though, so I wouldn't completely depend on it, but they are working on that though. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Web-QDA is that they are actively in development. What I mean is that they're continually adding new features, new improvements, and because it's all online, you just sign in from a web browser. You don't need to worry about installing the latest updates. It's always up to date. Now, once we go through this process of adding in all of these tags and socio-demographic information, then we get to the questioning area. As I mentioned, we can do things like most frequent word list, like, okay, these are the top 10 most commonly used words. And we can see that as a word cloud, if we would like. Okay, that can be useful for some presentations. We can search for specific text. Like here in this example, I'm looking for the word family in everything that we have. We see, okay, this appears 11 times in my Facebook example. And if we click on it, then it can show us where exactly that is. But to me, perhaps the most interesting is in the matrices. For example, we have here codes on one side and gender on the other side. So here we have the number of women and the number of men who have responded based on a certain category. Like we have one lady who responded about unable to visit elderly family. Here it is. And if we click on one cell or one number, it shows us here on the right at a glance which are those references. Like here, women who have mentioned unable to meet, I think this is unable to meet for religious Oh no, for regular social gatherings. Okay, here are the two references that it mentions here with the number 2. And the great thing is we can export this as an Excel file or as a PDF. And we can also visualize it as a conceptual map. So we can see it as a figure, and we can export this figure as a high quality PNG image. So between tables, PDF exports, and figures, we have many ways to get this information out there. Now, a last point that we should mention here is in management. Here under users, right now I'm the only user here, but I can invite someone. I could invite just with their email address as a guest. As we mentioned, this is useful to invite administrators, thesis or dissertation advisors, or perhaps just a colleague that's interested in our work. We can invite a guest and they do not need a paid subscription. And they will have access to read everything we have, and they can also leave us some comments, but they can't edit anything. If we invite a collaborator, this is for a team member who will, of course, need a paid subscription, but from any part of the world can join in our study. And you'll see here that my color is set to green. This is changeable. You can set it to whatever color you would like. But this is important because when we go to a source, like our Facebook example, we'll see that this text is highlighted in green. Well, yes, it's because I'm the one who added it, and it shows my name there if I put my cursor over it. If we're all working together in a team setting, we'll see different colors, different people in our team who are adding these different codes. That way it's easy to find if perhaps there's a question later on about one of these codes. Not a problem, we can go to the person who is in charge of that. So these are some of the more collaborative features that, in my opinion, are what sets Web-QDA apart from some of the other options that are out there. It has been built from the ground up with this collaboration in mind. We can also set up a logbook, we can leave comments for ourselves or for our other team members, and we can even set up a workflow. We can designate who is in charge of each section and leave some comments if that would help us organize ourselves in a group for a larger for a larger project. Sorry. All right. So coming back to the presentation, just to wrap things up now. Here are some of the technical specifications. Perhaps if you're already starting to dream about, I have a project in mind, maybe WebQDA could work for me. To give you an idea, of course, you're going to need a web browser. Any of the main commonly used ones now, like Internet Explorer or Edge, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, Opera, all are definitely valid options. You need to have cookies and JavaScript, but that's very common now. That shouldn't limit us too much. You need a decent sized resolution screen, at least 1280, and about the sources. For a document, or it can be a Word file, a text document, or PDF, it can be up to 500,000 characters per file. But there isn't really a limit per project. In the end, if it's larger than that, we just split it up into 2 documents. For images, they can be JPEGs or PNGs, up to 5 megabytes each. For audios, they can be MP3s or WAVs, up to 10 megabytes each. And videos can be MP4, OGG, or Windows Media, I think, up to 20 megabytes. But if we have files that are bigger than those size limits, not a problem. We can upload them to Dropbox and just link them in. So this can be useful. The examples that I'm using are with relatively small amounts of qualitative data. But if you want to analyze, let's say, all of the tweets from a given country for the year of 2020 with a certain hashtag, maybe there will be thousands or hundreds of thousands. Not a problem. That's definitely still doable. You just might need to split it up into several text files, but we can import as many as we would like. So I want to thank you all for your attention. I'm leaving you here with my email address if you're interested, and perhaps contact me a little bit further. It's just my name, Michael White, at UPEU, the Universidad Peruana Unión.edu.pe for Peru. It's all right, and now I want to turn it over for our question and answer time.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. White. This is now time for our question and answer, and we have several questions here in our box. I give the time now to Dr. Pavel.
Yes, Dr. Sele, we are projecting now some of the questions. So can we see now?
Yes, yes, we can see. So,
That's
Dr. Michael, the questions here, there are two questions here, the same. It's about the cost of the software. May I ask how much would this software cost for individual researchers? And that's also the same for the second question. It's the subscription fee. Okay.
Okay, that's a good question. I'm leaving a link here in the chat to the website for the license information. The starter license you can sign up for free for 2 weeks, 15 days. That's enough to get you started, kind of see if this could work for you and your project. Since this program is based out of Portugal, all of the fees are in euros. So the starter paid license, 90 days, or basically 3 months, is 42 euros. And as you go for longer licenses, the prices per day are reduced. For example, if you go for 180 days, or about 6 months, it goes down to 79 euros. And the roughly 1 year, 360-day license is 151 euros. Now, if you're interested, perhaps in a whole institution, there are discounts available. For example, there's a 5% discount if you have 15 licenses or more for 6 months. And the longer you are willing to include, the bigger the discount. For example, if you do a 12-month license, so the whole year, and you have 15 licenses, so 15 people perhaps in your university, there's a 10% discount. So the total would be a little bit over 2,000 euros for the year for 15 licenses. And you can see more information there on that page. They have additional discounts for 25 licenses, for 50 licenses, and there are also additional discounts if you do a 2-year package for 24 months. But that gives you some idea there through that website that I linked here in the chat. You can get a little more information about the pricing.
There's a question about lifetime license.
Right now, no, there are no lifetime licenses. That said, it would be worth contacting the Web-QDA team directly. There is a link at the very bottom of that link that I just sent you that it says more than 50 licenses, price upon request. If you click there, it will take you to a contact form. That might be the best way to ask about perhaps more unusual requests that are not listed on their page, like a lifetime license. It's worth asking.
Thank
Since it's
you.
a fairly flexible company, maybe you could work something out.
And also to our AQRA members, you may want, if you are interested to place an order, since Web-QDA is our partner, AQRA members have a discount. So if you order through us, uh, we can facilitate and certify that you are an AQRA member, and you will be given a discount. That's part of our MOU. So thank you, Dr. Pavel. Other questions? Yes. Is Web-QDA more user-friendly than NVivo?
This one, it's a little bit of a difficult question to answer because it's fairly subjective. In my opinion, yes, but perhaps in your opinion, no. With this sort of thing, it's like people who prefer to use Apple software and like to use the Keynote, or who like to use Microsoft software and like to use PowerPoint. Both can achieve the same things, yes. Both are slightly better at certain things than others, yes. In the end, it's mainly a personal preference. I like Web-QDA mainly for its emphasis on collaboration.
Yes, yes. Go ahead, please.
So the next one.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the next question, Dr. Pavel, we have like 2 minutes more to go.
Okay.
Have you had an experience with echo chamber effect when using social
Mm.
media, and how have you addressed it?
Hmm. Honestly, in my own studies, I'm mostly working with smaller groups, uh, like focus groups, or perhaps through a Google form. I haven't done many studies with large data sets like tweets with a certain hashtag. But from what I've seen of some colleagues who have worked with this and some other members here at Web-QDA, this whole idea of perhaps some who aren't real familiar in what is the echo chamber effect, this idea that unfortunately sometimes we get sort of biased view because most of the people who are commenting on a certain social media site often have a fairly similar viewpoint about a certain idea because it's a fairly harmonious group. I mean, these people are generally fairly similar, and I have similar opinions to my friends, so we're all just basically saying the same thing. I think one way that we can help address this, though, and one way that I've seen, is to try to amplify, to try to broaden our sample. We need a more diverse and representative sample. For example, if we go into a Facebook group, say, okay, let's go to the IAS official Facebook group, and we post a question there. Well, of course, we're probably going to get a mostly Adventist response. Okay, but then if we go to other Facebook groups, perhaps for other universities or for other faith traditions, then we can get more input from a more wide range of sources. So I think the key here when we use social media is where exactly we're getting our sample from. And yes, in my case, this sample that I used here, I asked my Facebook friends a question. Yes, there is a certain bias there because they're my friends, my contacts, people who think more or less like me. But I think one way to get around that is to try to broaden the sample, perhaps through groups that are very different from our personal views, and ask there too.
Mhm. Thank you. Is Web-QDA recommended for all qualitative research design? Which research design has been collaboratively using Web-QDA since its establishment, meaning from the time it's on in the market, and what's the least?
Say, probably in general, WebQDA is better for more focused studies. Most qualitative studies in the lines that I'm in are with samples that are maybe 10 people, 20 people. A big
Mhm.
one maybe has 50 or 100 people. These sorts of studies I think work really well because we can include more information about each participant. These work very well for WebQDA. It's designed for those sorts of studies. But if we're talking about qualitative studies with a large amount of data, like we're going to import hundreds of thousands of social media posts, that would be possible at a theoretical level, but very difficult in practice because we couldn't easily add the socio-demographic information for each person. The caveat there is that if we use some sort of a spreadsheet to include all of that information, like if we can somehow through APIs or something get those socio-demographic information for each person and organize that all in columns in a spreadsheet, then we can simply import that spreadsheet into WebQDA and it will have all of those socio-demographic details coded in. So that is possible, but honestly, WebQDA is not built, it's not designed for what some might say are big data qualitative studies.
Mhm.
Possible, yes, but it's not really made for it.
Mhm. I think it's now time, but I want to add one question here. You have focused in your presentation on how to use Web-QDA during this time when we cannot go out and do interview, do observation. But this does not mean that the data samples that you gave were those coming from Facebook, from Twitter, because of course these are the types of data that we can access during this time. But of course, we can also analyze here data, interview data, observation data, and documents, right?
Yes, definitely. And
Yeah.
perhaps if you still have some data from a previous study that you haven't been able to finish, maybe now, while we have some time at home, is the perfect opportunity to dust off some old interview transcripts and import them into WebQDA. And yes, of course, that's really what WebQDA was built for at the beginning. And this whole new era with qualitative studies online, with social media and with videos and audio messages, that's something new. The core is still perhaps more traditional, we might say, studies with interview transcripts or even audio recordings of in-person focus groups. All of that is definitely still an option.
Um, One question, if we have a training on how to use WebQDA, how long would that be? How many hours?
Mm, Sort of depends. I have offered a more hands-on workshop, we might say, showing how I set up basically everything that I've just shown you in this sample project. I just showed you sort of the results of it, but if you want to see how do you do that, mm, 1 hour is possible. 90 minutes, an hour and a half would be better, so that we also have some time for questions along the way and we're not just running through it.
That's right.
Mm, I have also done as much as a 3-day series, like 1 hour per day for 3 different days, with short homework in between each section, where each participant has to go and collect their own data, perhaps from their own friends and family members, and import that into WebQDA. That's definitely possible too.
Yeah, we are interested actually. For many years, we have been promoting Web-QDA, but we have not really shown our AQRA family how it can be done. So we have not maximized, this has been this collaboration, but we have not really maximized how to do it, how to use it. Dr. Pavel, do you want to say something?
Yes, I want to thank Dr. Michael for this insightful presentation, and we definitely enjoyed it. And this is the new page, as Dr. Arceli already mentioned. We were missing this component of Web-QDA. So thank you for filling this up. And we are looking forward to more lectures and more of your involvement in ACRA training.
Yes, and we have, Dr. Pavel, we have some questions that are not answered, right?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Uh-huh.
By the way,
Can you please copy these questions? And Dr.
mhm,
Michael, can we send to you these questions and send back
yes,
to us the answer so we can send the answer to those who asked the question? Will you
yes,
be
we
willing
still
to
have
do
a
that?
few questions to answer.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, and
Sounds great.
to our ACRA members and those of you who are not here, even though you are not ACRA members yet, we would like to say that we are considering quite seriously of having the ACRA training. We don't want to ambush Dr. Michael here, but we'll have the conversation and we will let you know once we have finalized our plans. But we can see that this is something I think that we really need. Uh, I think here in Asia, we have really been doing for many of us like the manual data analysis. Yes, we know about this one, this computer assisted data analysis, but uh, we have not maximized on that. So by providing this training, we hope that we can be equipped how to do that. At least we have an option. We have this experience. And if we really want to stay with the manual, then we can do that. But I think it's our responsibility uh, to share that, yeah, here it is. There is something that can um, make our lives easier and our data analysis more, perhaps more credible. So once again, we would like to thank Dr. Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a very pleasant experience to have Dr. Michael with us. And now